I'm making a presentation based on the fact that I think what will help solve the problem is the better use of evidence. And that's what we're about. We're about trying to bring that evidence to bear and to offer that to the education system. And that's what it's fantastic to see people on a Saturday coming to be at something like this because, many of us are interested in evidence in education. So we're doing something in our small bit of the world about this, and this is where we're at the moment in the couple of years that we've been going. We are trying to fund projects where we think there is promise that this activity can help to close the gap. And we've got 56 studies underway. Most of those, 49 of them, are random controlled trials. So I'm all right with Ben Goldacre. And the others are all quasi-experimental. We're into the numbers. We want to know impact. We're trying to redress that balance, which hasn't really been sorted out in education, between qualitative and quantitative research. And we think we need to have a lot more quantitative analysis to kind of balance things off. So most of our stuff is random controlled trials. Questions like, and I won't go through them all because it would be a kind of boring list, what's the benefit of going to school on a Saturday morning as well as the rest of the week? How do we know? So we're running a big study right now up in Manchester with children randomly selected to be at school on Saturday as well as the rest of the week. Now critically, and this is an important point for us, that we haven't done that just by creating Saturday schools and comparing those to the rest of the children in Manchester. We've done that by finding a large number of children in Manchester who wanted to go to Saturday schools, whose parents had signed it off, who were up for it, who had the wherewithal, who had the desire, and from that group selected those who go to the Saturday schools. There's been quite a lot in English education where you compare the effect, but not against the willing, but against everybody else. And that isn't the test we need. We need to get really good samples, and from the people who want to do it, then you randomize. Don't worry about the other children. They're going to get Saturday schools next year, I mean. So we're dealing with the ethical issue by wedging it, by doing it in the following year for those children, by waitlisting. But we've got to compare the children who go on a Saturday with the kind of children whose families and schools wanted them and supported them and were ready to go to Saturday schools, not with everybody else. So we get to see the real difference of going. What's the benefit of learning a musical instrument when you're in school? We're doing that question. What's the benefit, for example, of organising professional development in different ways for teachers? So we're doing a big analysis of the TEEP study, which is basically an assessment for learning development for teachers. What's the benefit of supporting parents when children are first starting schools and giving them particular interventions that you can help parents give children their best start? We're running a whole set of studies under 3 basic headings: parents in the community, teaching and teachers, which is where most of the resources go, and interventions, and checking the validity of those interventions against proper controlled studies. 56 of them underway today. I think we'll probably look to fund 200 by the end of the next 4 or 5 years. 1,800 schools are involved in our studies. So, that's a significant number of schools that are already demonstrating that they're up for this. People told us at the beginning, do you know what? You can't do random controlled studies in education. People don't like them, people won't buy it, and all the rest of it. Well, here's the news. In 2 years, we've got 56 going with 1,800 schools involved. Some of those schools are control schools, which means you have to obviously test your kids at the pre-test, post-test. You don't get much out of it for that, but you are contributing to the system's knowledge. And many schools are involved in that way. But 1,800. Over 300,000 children involved in these studies. And that number's out of date. It's more like 340,000 now. And we're growing that body of studies all the time. The top, you'll have heard about this. I'm sure I won't need to say much to this audience about it, but the other thing we do in partnership with University of Durham is we maintain the Teaching and Learning Toolkit, which is this summary of what we kind of know. It's the starting and finishing place for everything that we do. We assemble the evidence in education, we make it available in the toolkit, and then as we finish our studies, we'll see whether those studies move the needle and whether they make a difference to what we already know. We build on the knowledge. We don't start from scratch, we build on what we already know all of the time. So what I want to talk about today is not so much that descriptive stuff, but I want to get into how we apply this in our schools. But just finally, the reason that this evidence-led approach, and again I'm talking to the choir really, it preaches to the choir, is we do need to understand more, particularly in times of austerity, and personally, I think that that's to come in education. Schools have been incredibly well supported, I think, during a period of austerity in this country. It's a great testament. But that chill is to come yet, I think, in English education, perhaps. We need to understand, how do we get the maximum benefit for every pound we spend, increasingly? And I think evidence can give you a much better sense of the return on the investments you make. Because quite a lot in education makes a difference, but that isn't really the test. The test is, am I getting the biggest difference for this investment? Which is what we've got to keep checking. It allows us to focus our effort where it makes the most difference. And finally, and I think at the moment the big one for me, is it allows us to resist some of the fads and fakes. And we've had the talk earlier about the, Brain Gym or VK. A whole load of people will come to you in our schools, banging the doors down, especially as schools are quite rightly increasingly controlling their own budgets, controlling their own resources. There's a marketplace which people are desperately to get their hands on that discretionary spend at school level, and they'll sell you wares and snake oil unless we are able to resist those fads and fakes. And how do we resist it? We resist it with kind of the capacity to really ask the hard questions and to say to someone, show me the evidence.